there's some kind of somewhat mainstream thought is we just got to deal with the situation that we have and try it. There's no hope for that. None. And to believe that is just to deny history of who the guy is. Every day he does it. He just gets crazier and crazier by the day. So if you try to ascribe any level of sanity to him, he's going to keep getting crazier. It just can't be any clearer. It can't be any clearer. This ball is moving every day.
Hey, James, Trump has flooded the zone with one action after another, most controversial, more than a few illegal. This is purposeful. He wants to dismantle the American government and society as we know it. I mean, here's the critical point that everyone ought to realize. More important than anything else, Trump has contempt for the rule of law, unless it advantages him. A Reagan judge said his terminating birthright citizenship was blatantly unconstitutional. Firing all those civil service employees who have protection is going to be deemed illegal. The idea he can impound funds, the Supreme Court has ruled you can't. It even said that a line item veto, much more modest, wasn't constitutional. Trump doesn't give a damn about that. He's doing it to make a mark. He's doing it for several reasons. He does fancy himself as an Orban-type dictator. And some of these actions, he figures just could be upheld by that deeply partisan Supreme Court. He can count on 4 votes. All he's got to do is get a 5th. But finally, it's a diversion. He excites the MAGA base before he sells them out on taxes and immigration visas for high-tech workers. And the high-profile ICE raids, can you believe they have Dr. Phil, the faux doctor who peddles faux medicines, accompanying ICE on raids? They'll go into schools and churches, and, they're going to do some awful things. They're going to separate families. But the one thing he won't do, he won't deport 1 million migrants like he promised to do, or 10 million like he promised. So it's great to have Holman playing the tough guy out front, but these are diversions from his real policies for which he may well fail.
Well, all that is true. I guess what I'm sort of trying to concentrate on, what should the Democratic response be? Should we attack on all fronts? Should we attack on the legal criminality front? Should we, I don't know how you pass up Caroline Kennedy, for putting animals in a blender. I don't know how you, I've always kind of been, since this took place, an advocate of patience, but I don't know how you can be patient in light of all of this. I just ask you this: is there some chance this thing just collapses? Yeah. That it's just so illegal, so incompetent, so crazy that it doesn't work. I've never seen that before, but I don't know that.
Well, it's not going to work. I mean, when you fire everybody who has competence anywhere, the kind of people he's bringing in. So ultimately, it's going to fail, and ultimately, Trump figures, that's on his side. He can last as long as he wants to. But no, these are terrible policies, and they'll pay a price for them. It's just a case of when.
So there was a special, I don't know what it means. Maybe you can call Ann Seltzer and ask her, in Iowa Senate district that Trump carried by 21 or 23, and a Democrat won. Now, I don't know if it was special circumstances, that there was a blowout somewhere in Minnesota. I don't know if this is special circumstances, if it indicates anything, but a 23, 25-point turnaround is a lot. And if you look at the polling, the public is kind of getting, I think they're going to salvo on this pretty fast. But I don't know, and I don't know how much, they're committing suicide. Well, should we have an assisted suicide with them? I don't know.
James, I hope you're right. I must tell you, the last cycle, I became a little bit skeptical of special elections as harbingers. Maybe I've overreacted that way. But look, I think, I read all these stories about how dispiriting, chaotic Democrats are. It's
Yeah.
true, but it's also predictable. That's the way they were on January the 30th, 1973, 1981, or 2017. January 30th, 2017, Democrats thought, my God, what have we done? This election was a fraud, etc. So instead of spending all the time and energy assailing everything, pulling out of WHO was a terrible mistake. The demagoguery against trans people is sickening. Freezing funding for foreign aid is counterproductive. But this is not what's on people's minds. And Trump doesn't give a damn. Little kids in Africa die because of this. Democrats need, and you said this, to focus on a handful of issues that directly go to his policies, his lack of integrity, and how they affect people. You mentioned raising the minimum wage. They're against it. Abortion. Abortion may not have been a big deal in the presidential election. It's still a big deal, and he is going to go back on his campaign pledge to leave it to the states. Already, I saw Bobby Kennedy on Wednesday morning said, Trump has told me to look at the safety of the abortion pill. You know what that means. When that big reconciliation bill comes up and they propose huge tax cuts for the affluent, and they're going to cut Medicaid. They're going to cut food stamps. Those are issues. Drug prices. There's a bill which was enacted a couple years ago where drug prices go down in a year or two, particularly for Medicare recipients. That's a good issue. Hold him to his pledge on inflation. I think actually Democrats have lots of opportunities as long as they realize he's going to dominate for the next couple months.
I agree with everything you say, but if I say we should be patient, three more things
That's
come
true.
up. All right, he freezes every grant. Okay, they lay off I don't know how many 100,000 federal employees. That the Bobby Kennedy cats in a blender story from Caroline Kennedy, who you know much better than I do. I think she's a very nice, solid human being. She wouldn't say anything like that unless it was
She's
true.
totally credible. Totally credible.
Yeah, I mean, in an interaction I had with her that has always been very pleasant, and you know her very well. You serve on that board. I know a lot of people that know her, and to a person, people speak very highly of her. I can understand why, but that destroying a pet in a blender. Okay, I mean, so how do you take that pitch? Now he's up for confirmation hearings. Going to be, but they just keep supply. Every time you say we need to be patient,
Right.
We need to just take our walk, rope a dope, don't go in. He does three other things that you go, God Almighty, man, look what this guy just did. And there was I highly recommend it. There was a piece in the New York Times, an op-ed piece by an economist. When I read it, I had the feeling she might be a conservative, but I don't know. And of course, this is my obsession. The bond market is starting to misbehave.
James, who wrote the piece?
I can't remember her name, but it's on.
Yes.
It's prominent on the Times site.
We'll get it.
It's a kind of, as I recall, it's a Mary Smith.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It's the bond market, New York Times.
It doesn't matter, and apparently she knows what she's talking about. Why it's so dangerous. And one of the things that we talk about, he doesn't do anything about prices that he promised to do something about. What's not going down? Maybe the most important price you have is the price of money. The price of money is not going down. If anything, it's going up. And of course, that's largely determined by the bond market. And at some point, that's the government is going to pay more interest. People are not going to be able to buy a house. We've now had an all-time low in housing starts. My counsel, I know because I said the bond market was so powerful back in the early 90s, but
you wanted it to adopt
everything. Yeah. But there's so much. I don't know. It's just overwhelmingly. And I don't think they can pull any of this off. I just don't think they have the confidence.
No, I agree with you. they can't. At this and look, when Bobby Kennedy comes up, Democrats ought to do what they're doing. They ought to oppose him. There's a chance he'll be defeated. There is a chance,
Oh
and there
yeah,
is a
oh yeah, I
chance
think so.
that Tulsi Gabbard will be defeated. I think it was unfortunate. The two people one who wasn't defeated, Pete Hegseth, and Kash Patel may not be defeated. Those are the two I'd most prefer to lose. But Bobby Kennedy and
Hedgepath was dangerously close.
yeah, he really was.
Supposedly, they gave Tillis a free ride in the primary and promised him a bunch of money. That's I'm just repeating. Be clear, I don't know this, but pretty substantial gossip out there.
Well, on that
effect.
gossip, let me just tell Senator Tillis if he gets his free ride, and if a certain Democrat named Roy Cooper decides to run against him, that free ride may not count for much.
It may not count.
But
I agree. But I mean,
let me give you. You're right. It's hard not to get worked up. Let me give you. I mean, we focused on Hegseth and Patel and how awful some of the top appointments are. Let me give you one example of how bad it is. The U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia is going to be a guy named Ed Martin. He's a failed politician and a right-wing activist.
Right.
This week, he sent out a memo saying to the whole staff, let's go after a former January 6th prosecutor, Ashley Akers. Why? She had the audacity to criticize Martin. So Martin said, let's get all of her, this is a private email which came out, let's get all of her records and emails. This is a private citizen, James, and whose only offense is she criticized Martin. And then he said, quote, we'll see if we can help her, end quote. I wonder what Mr. Martin meant by that.
So let me put on my very small, ill-fitting legal hat here for a second. I think in order to do that, they're going to have to go to a judge, all right, or magistrate, and they're going to have to show. I don't think even the Justice Department can just go willy-nilly and decide to go through somebody's emails. I think they probably have to establish some connection or probable cause. Now, I guess if you shop long and hard enough, you can find a judge to sign anything. But that might be he might need just a little bit more.
And I don't know if he was talking about her email. She was in the Justice Department. She resigned, but that wouldn't bother Mr. Martin, James. He doesn't care. I mean,
I don't think he would either. But I mean, even in this darkest time, there's still a couple of hoops you got to jump through. I don't know. It's a good question. And then her Justice Department emails, do they belong to the Justice Department? Can they look at employees' emails at will? I don't know what the law is, so I should just shut up.
Well, I know less than you do, and I would only predict whatever the law is, they will stretch it, or if they have to, they will disobey it because they don't believe in it much.
They won't even look at it. Another thing, let me add, in the whole incompetence thing, the Speaker of the House is a massively weak, uncurious man.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't think, if we would have had this kind of situation, you had Pelosi, you had Schumer, maybe even Hakeem, but at least there'd be some level of congressional talent. I don't see there's very much there, to tell you the truth.
Look, the founders, you and I weren't around to do podcasts with them. God, would that have been fun. But the founders thought that the legislative branch should be the most powerful branch of government. Congress has ceded power repeatedly over the years. One can argue about what that balance should be. Trump wants to totally take it away. And if Republicans allow that to happen, I don't want any of them to say I'm an institutionalist, because that's what this is all about. And
so everybody should do themselves a favor. Read the 14th Amendment.
Yep.
And particularly the citizenship part of it. And also, while you're doing that, I think it's Article 1. I don't know if I'm the most conservative judge you can imagine. If I'm Alito or Thomas, or I'm even go to trouble, how do you get around the power of the congressional to appropriate money? I don't think. I would like to see. Pam Collin asked about the 14th Amendment. She said, well, there was an argument made because they're children of people that were here illegally. I don't know what it means. It's a very tennis argument. It's not a very good one, but that's what the narrow string that they cling on to. But man, and the judge had just dismissed it. The language could not be any fucking clearer. I mean, it just can't. Even if you're for, most liberal possible interpretation you can come up with a law, this one doesn't leave any wiggle room that I see.
Well, James, can I add something, which is, you're right. Read the 14th Amendment, and then I want you to go, all of you people out there, and search and find testimony that was given in 1995 by one Walter Dellinger, our dear late friend, on birthright citizenship to the House Judiciary Committee. It is the most compelling, eloquent, forceful, it's absolutely clear what birthright citizenship is. And Walter laid it out, and anyone who reads that and reads the 14th Amendment knows what Trump is doing. I don't think he really cares, James. I think he just loves to throw that shit out, if you will. And, it distracts, it gets people going. And, as I say, he always thinks he has a shot to win. I mean, he comes in, Alito, Thomas, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, man, they're in his pocket. So, he could win this.
Yeah, I mean, look, you learn not to say never when it comes to this. You just do. But they're so incompetent in so much of the gang that couldn't shoot straight. And I'd love to have a 5-minute conversation with Susie Wiles, who doesn't have, I don't think has any experience to speak of in the federal government, but no one has any experience dealing with this kind of clown show.
Well, she's obviously a very talented political person, but she's the only experience in Washington.
Seems to be a really good infighter.
A low-level job with Jack Kemp many years ago. So I don't think she's the solution if people think she is.
Yeah, I don't either. But you always kind of, something, I don't know.
Well, James, I also get, I will read a column almost every day. Someone saying, a Democrat saying we ought to, try to work with him. Let's see if we can work with him. Somebody wrote in the Post the other day, he really, we're normalizing him now. That's good. He's no, I'm sorry. He's not normal. He is not normal. And if you want to work with Kash Patel, if you want to work with Pete Hegseth, if you want to work with the people surrounding him, go ahead. There may be an infrastructure issue or something that you can work with him on. But you wait till he proposes that budget reconciliation bill. That's the big one that's coming up, and the House may start on that as early as next week or the week after. And, James, to get there, they're going to have to Medicaid. They keep thinking of as that's just a bunch of poor people. We can slash that. Well, it's not just a bunch of poor people. It's nursing homes. It's rural hospitals. And it's people making up to $43,000, $44,000 a year. And Trump carried people who made under 50. He only carried them by 1 point, but he carried them. There are a bunch of Trump voters in that. These guys they don't know the trouble that they're headed for.
They have no earthly idea. And they have and also they don't have any earthly idea of how popular Medicaid is. And, but again, it's just going to see, can they survive this? And you're right, when reconciliation comes, I don't know if there's any preparation for it. They got a uber thin majority in the House. And I think when the history is recorded from the election day through today, the people that are really going to look bad are the people that say, well, look, this is not the end of the world. Let's try to work with the guy.
Yep.
Or, you're overreacting to it. It's Trump derangement syndrome. I mean, I don't agree with him. I don't like him, but, maybe he'll change and we can do something great for America. Oh, God almighty. And I mean, we just got to keep writing the names down, like the Wall Street Journal editorial page.
They've been good on some issues.
So they've been good, but they were like, this is at the beginning. Yeah. This is not the end of days. Right. The John Fettermans of the world.
Right. Well, John Fetterman just wants attention.
I understand, but I see a little bit of it. Bill Maher. I'm tired of it. I just am exhausted. Maybe a bit. I mean, there's some kind of somewhat mainstream thought is we just got to deal with the situation that we have and try. There's no, you can't. There's no hope for that.
Yeah.
None. And to believe that is just to deny history of who the guy is.
Yeah, I mean, if you think you can work with them, as I say, you can work with Kash Patel, you can work with Exet, you can work with unconstitutional orders, you can work with sending people into churches and schools to rip little kids out.
Every day he does it. He just gets crazier and crazier about a day. So if you try to ascribe any level of sanity to him, he's going to keep getting crazier. It just can't be any clearer.
Yeah.
It can't be any clearer. This ball is moving every day.